Welcome to Orion Philosophy, where we explore, discuss, and dissect areas of practical philosophy for use in everyday life. The world we live in has never been more connected. Our cities house millions of people. We have phones that connect us to our loved ones at the push of a button. And social media has us a few clicks away from the unfiltered and sometimes questionable opinions of billions of strangers. This connection we all share is now part of our life. And as a part of our life, it means that we're inevitably going to cross paths with people we don't get along with, we don't agree with, or we don't like. And this is okay. It's part of life and the nature of the society we now live in. However, this connectivity starts to become less okay when we allow it to destabilize our peace of mind. Today, we're going to be covering another community question, and specifically, we're going to explore how Stoic philosophy can help us deal with difficult people. And we'll learn some tools that not only reduce the impact that other people have on our peace of mind, but also shift our perspective of people so that their behavior and their actions no longer cause us to react impulsively. And more importantly, no longer cause us to react negatively. For this subject, I'm going to break down our approach into 4 key areas: the concept of control, compassion, choice, and reflection. Along the way, we'll be drawing on the wisdom of the Stoics like Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca to act as guides as we navigate the material. Starting with control, Epictetus lectured in ancient Greece, teaching that there is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about the things which are beyond the power of our will. The behavior of other people is beyond the power of our will. The things people believe, the things they do, and the things they say are all outside of our control. The chance of you bumping into people you dislike is outside of your control. However, what we can control is how we respond to those people when we encounter them. This concept is the foundation of healthy interactions with other people, whether we agree with them or not. Every person has their nature. They have their values, judgments, beliefs, biases, and their values, judgments, biases, and beliefs will all reflect that nature. And by extension, these things will direct their behaviors, what they say, and what they do. No amount of anger or frustration on your part will change a person acting in accordance with that nature. Expecting other people to put aside their own values to align with yours is a very naive way of interacting with the world. So Epictetus quite rightly tells us that the behavior of other people is outside the reach of our control. He goes on to tell us that trying to control this will ultimately lead to suffering. He said the following: outside our power are our physical characteristics, the class into which we're born, our reputation in the eyes of others, and honors and offices that may be bestowed on us. Within our sphere of control, we are naturally free, independent, and strong. Beyond that sphere, we are weak, limited, and dependent. If you pin your hopes on things outside your control, taking upon yourself what rightfully belongs to others, you're liable to stumble, fool, suffer, and blame both gods and men. But if you focus your attention on what is truly your own concern and leave to others what concerns them, then you will be in charge of your interior life. To build on the work of Epictetus to avoid unnecessary suffering, if we can't control it, we have to learn to accept it. And here, we should probably address a concern that some people have with Stoic acceptance. Hero acceptance does not mean to lie down and let other people do what they want, regardless of whether we agree with them or not. It simply means that we accept people for what they are and accept that they will behave in alignment with their own nature. From that foundation, we can then decide how we respond. Next, we have compassion and understanding. Whenever we come across a person who irritates us or does something we don't agree with, it's very easy to follow our instant gut reaction and get annoyed or even angry and begin to judge that person. However, everything we do, everything we say, Every belief we hold and bias we have has a reason and a background for being there. We build up all of these things over the course of our life through our experiences, our interactions with other people, our wins and losses, and our hardships and suffering. Because our interactions with the world depend on what we've experienced before. Unfortunately, it's often the most destructive people who have had the most hardship and the most challenge in their lives. It's not uncommon for people to project their pain onto the world around them and treat others like they have been treated, or treat others in a way that protects themselves from being hurt again. And it's often the case that when we don't have the tools to cope with what we're going through or what we've been through in the past, these things boil over into our own life and, by extension, the lives of those around us. Treating people with compassion involves trying to understand why they're doing what they're doing and deliberately looking into the sources of their behavior, rather than just getting annoyed at them, or worse, treating them poorly, which ultimately risks helping them solidify some of the beliefs causing their behaviors in the first place. It's worth thinking about if you were in their shoes. You may very well have ended up on the same path with the same worldview, doing the same things. When you wake in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. Marcus Aurelius recognized that as we go through life, we will experience behavior from people that we don't necessarily agree with, and that this behavior is due to those people being unable to navigate themselves through good and evil. Marcus also made the observation that the nature of the wrongdoer is similar to his own, that we are all people and we all share a common nature. The next concept is not allowing the behaviors of other people to determine how we act. You and I both have our own values, we have our own opinions on what's right and wrong, and we have our own ideas of who we would like to be and how we should behave. Unfortunately, these things are often thrown aside when we come into contact with the person we don't agree with, we get into conflict with, we dislike, or even hate. The behaviors of another person are often used to validate our own crappy behavior. And instead of staying true to our values, we often descend into tit-for-tat childishness. And when questioned or challenged why we are doing what we're doing and why we are behaving the way we're behaving, we use language like, they did this, so I did that, or they started it. The only thing this shows us, and the only thing this kind of language shows us, is that we have allowed the actions of another person to dictate our own behavior. We have allowed that person to control us. Marcus Aurelius said the following: "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." So, a better alternative is trying to stick to your own values and under no circumstances allow the actions of another person to control how you behave. Let your reaction be a deliberate choice. Don't be dragged into the dirt. It's a very easy thing to meet people down there, but it's a more valuable thing to say no. Marcus Aurelius also said, to live a good life, we have the potential for it if we learn to be indifferent to what makes no difference. Finally, we have reflection. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant to my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" While it's not a good idea to dwell on everything everyone says about us, it's often helpful to look to see if there are patterns in the way people respond and interact with us. Often we think we know how we come across to other people, but it's very likely that we have some blind spots and we have behaviors that we're not necessarily aware of. Sometimes these behaviors can be detrimental to our relationships and the interactions we have with other people. So, if we find ourselves getting a negative response from someone, it's not unreasonable to think that could be a one-off, or that that particular person was having a bad day, or they're generally just not necessarily a nice person to be around. However, if we get a similar response from multiple people across different areas of our life, it's not unreasonable to think that there's a chance that you're presenting yourself in a way that could be damaging the way you interact with other people. Now, this isn't necessarily an indicator to change. It's simply something to think about, an indicator that we might need to reflect on what we're doing, on whether we have a blind spot or something that we can work on to help us in our relationships with people in the future. Similarly, if we're given open criticism, it's often worth trying to look at it objectively. While it's not necessarily helpful to accept every criticism and believe it to be true, it's also not necessarily helpful to reject all criticism and just carry on as we are. Generally, there's a balance to be had between the two of these when we look at what's being said objectively and try to understand whether or not there's any truth to it. To end, I'll leave you with this quote from Seneca: "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness."